Welcome to toy-polloi. Parental guidance. This video contains scenes of Lego destruction.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi, and in this series we're going to be restoring a vintage He-Man and the Masters of the Universe Fright Zone. Now this is a fairly large playset, as you can see, and it's actually just a bit too big to even fit on my sort of work area here, but I'm going to try and cover every issue that there is on this, even though I'm not going to be able to show you the whole thing in one go. Now this set actually looks fairly displayable, as you can see, but there are lots of little issues and lots of things broken on it, and of course we are missing the snake, and I hope to be able to cover all of those as I fix this playset. But let's take a closer look at some of the main issues. First up, you can see the spring-loaded trap down here doesn't work. The little pegs that hold that in place have snapped off, and also the pegs that hold the elastic bands in place have broken, so we need to work out a way to fix those. The clips that hold the set apart, there should be one on either side. Both of those are missing. The original ones of those are made out of plastic with a plastic hinge, and that tends to snap over time like all plastic hinges do, so that's why they're missing. I think we should be able to make a sort of modern replacement, so I'm going to have a go at doing that. You can see the jail cell here. The door does actually hold in place, but the hinge at the top is snapped, so we've got to repair that. The clip that holds the door in place, again there is a pivot point on that that's broken, so I want to take that apart and remake that. Then we can see that the snake is clearly missing that comes through the hole there. There should be a sort of a rubber serpent snake that you put your hand in and sort of grab figures. That is always missing because basically the rubber perishes over time. So I do actually have an idea for a modern sort of replacement to that, which I'll be showing you. Then we have the tree at the top. This one is probably the better of the two that I have. It has a crack down the top section of it. It's missing one branch, but I think we can probably do something with it. If I can't, then I may need to find a better version of it. I have a couple, but they're all in this sort of very broken state. So I think this is actually going to be quite a fun set to work on, just because there's so many small areas that need repairing, and it seems like these issues are fairly common. Everyone I've seen of these has one or more of those bits broken, especially things like the trap and the door. This type of plastic that's used for the main part of the set gets very brittle, so it's easily snapped, and that's why you end up with things like the hinges broken. But with a little bit of time and effort, I think we should be able to get all of this sort of up and running and make a very displayable playset. So let's get on with the process, and the first thing to do is actually give everything a good clean. This has been stored in a loft for quite a long time. It's actually been stored in my loft as well, so it's very dusty and very dirty. So I'm going to take this to my sink downstairs and use some hot soapy water and a toothbrush and give it a good clean. Now everything is clean, I can get to work on the first fix, and I'm going to start with the jail cell because I think that's probably the most interesting, or certainly it's the most interesting to me because there's a few moving parts to it. We have the door here which actually fits on the front of this sort of back piece, and you can see you can slot one of the hinge pieces in the bottom, and then the top piece should clip into this sort of area at the top, and it does sort of clip in, but part of that clip has snapped away, so when we rotate the door forwards it actually just falls out. So what I'm going to do is repair that just using a thin piece of 1mm styrene. I'm not going to repair it exactly how it was originally. I don't think there would be a piece that goes right over the front. I think it would have been two pieces either side that you sort of push the little hinge piece into. What I'm going to do though is, because there's quite a lot of sort of give in this model, is actually just create a new sort of loop piece that goes over the front, because we can actually easily slot this underneath like that and then sort of push it up and then allow the bottom piece to clip into place. So there's quite a lot of give there, so I just need to make a new little loop, and as I say, that's going to be done using 1mm styrene sheet. We'll cut something and then plastic weld it in place, and I think that should hold quite nicely. Then the next problem is the actual locking mechanism. That is made out of these two, oops, there goes the door. That is made out of these two pieces here which fit in the back. You have this sort of lock piece that sits well, it sits like that, and as you push the handle at the top it moves this lock up and down, but you can see here the little pivot point has snapped off, so we need to replace that, and we're going to do that with a piece of Lego. But first thing, let's get this door back in place. Now, because I've dealt with this sort of plastic before, I know that this plastic works incredibly well with plastic welds, so that's what we're going to be using to glue these pieces together, because it's not really a glue, it actually sort of fuses the surfaces together and makes it as strong as the original. So what I've got to do is cut a strip of this off that's the same width as the original sort of missing piece. So if we measure that, you can see that's about 6mm. So I'll cut a 6mm strip off this, and that we can attach that between the two broken joins. I will add a little bit of a curve to it. This stuff is quite easy to bend. So if I cut a strip that's slightly longer, I'll then bend it to make a slight curve, and we can attach that in place. And I think that will do the job, because as I say, there's quite a lot of give. If I take the door here, I can actually sort of push that section up quite far and still get the bottom piece in place. So I think as long as I leave a little bit of a gap, so that there's a little bit of movement there, we can make quite a reasonable sort of replacement hinge. So let's get the styrene cut and we'll stick it in place. Okay, that was actually quite quick to make. So you can see here, this is a tiny piece of styrene which I've given a slight curve to. I've also sanded down the ends because you want them to be at a slight angle, and I think this will sit quite nicely over the sort of broken edges of the piece that's missing. So what we've got to do now is plastic weld that in place. This is the plastic weld I use, so it's EMA Model Supplies plastic weld. If you check out the tool shop on toy-polloi.com, I put links to a lot of the materials and tools that I use, so check out where I get that from. This stuff is not a glue, as I said. This actually bonds the two surfaces together, so you just have to put a tiny amount on and the two surfaces will fuse. Once we've got that in place, we can then paint it to match the rest of the set. So let's get this one stuck on and see if we can get that door working. So I've given that styrene about 10 minutes just to let everything set, and you can see that's held on quite nicely. So now if we get the door, as long as I'm careful, I think this should work quite well. So I'm going to slide that in just sort of a slight angle, push that in and down, and there we go. Yeah, that now does work. So if I tip this up, we can open the door. Yeah, that's opening. So it does work. It just needs a coat of paint on it. So I've got a few bits of paint here. I don't have anything that's this sort of swampy green colour, so I'm just going to mix what I have. I've got a couple of different Vallejo colours here. This is olive green, I've got gold yellow, and I've also got this Meng colour, which is sort of red brown. So none of these are quite right, but I reckon if I mix them together I should be able to make something that's sort of this swampy colour, and it will hide that. But that's a nice simple job, and we've got the door hinge working again. I'm pleased with that. And there we go, that's the hinge painted. As you can see, I've tried to sort of colour match it as best I can using those paints. I've actually given it a little bit of a gradient so that the left side is slightly darker than the right side, and the overall effect is pretty good. You would be hard pushed to spot that if someone didn't tell you, so I think that's an acceptable replacement hinge there. So the door does now open quite nicely, which is what we needed. But what we're going to do is turn this around and work on the latch mechanism, because that also is slightly broken. So this is one part of the latch mechanism, and this is the second part. This bit sort of locks into the top part of the door, and that goes on there. And this whole piece sort of slots in the back. You've got a lever that comes out of the top here, another lever that has to sort of fit in place at the bottom. And then you're supposed to push this little piece in to two holes. There's a slightly larger hole on one side. If I just sort of wiggle this about, it will finally clip in. So you've got a slightly larger hole on this side. And then on the other side, there should be a small little peg that pokes out to hold everything in place. And without that, it's very wobbly. So what we're going to do is replace that missing post. And to do that, we are going to be using a piece of Lego. This is a Lego lance. I've shown this bit before for various projects. And the reason I'm using a lance is because you can actually get it in brown. You can buy aerials as well, which are the same sort of thickness piece. But I thought this, because it's brown, it's not a perfect match on colour, but it will do the job. So what we're going to do is cut a small piece of this off and insert it into the broken part on the lock mechanism. So let's take the lock out again, like so. What we've got to do is drill a hole into here, which is the same diameter of this. You can see I've just started drilling a little pilot hole, but what we finally need to do is drill a hole that is the same diameter as this piece of Lego, which is, if I get my ruler out, I can show you. It's going to be 3mm. So we'll drill a small pilot hole in here first. I'll then drill a 3mm hole into that we can insert a piece of this Lego into. I'm not actually going to glue this Lego piece in because my plan is slightly different to what I would normally do. So let's get the holes drilled and then I'll show you what that plan is. Okay, so there is the hole drilled. Now what we're going to do is cut off a small length of this Lego lance. I think we probably only need, about that long, because it's just got to sort of slightly stick through the hole. I'm just going to file down the end a bit just to make it nice and smooth. And then that should hopefully fit nicely in the hole, which it does. Now normally I would glue that in place, but in this instance I'm not. I'm actually going to leave this loose so that we can plug this in and remove it, because I think that will actually make it a lot easier to fit this part into the toy anyway. And it also takes off the pressure of the plastic on the original back piece, because normally what would happen is there'd be a little post there and you'd actually have to push the plastic of the back open a bit to get this in, and then it sort of springs back, and as this plastic gets old and brittle, I want to try and avoid that. So let's try and attach this to the toy using this sort of loose method of basically just sort of pushing this into the hole, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so here is the lock mechanism with the little lock latch piece in place. We have to insert this into the back, which I showed you before. That bit goes through the top there, and then there's another little bit that goes into the bottom, and then we have to sort of line this up, push it into place. Now you can see what would normally happen is to get that post through, you'd actually have to pull these pieces apart slightly, and it puts stress on those, which is what I'm trying to avoid. So we can hook in the larger of the two cylinders, which is on that side, and then we can take my piece of Lego. I'm hoping we can insert it into there. It might require a pair of pliers or something like that. If I grab that, I can push it through the hole and into the little hole that we've made in that piece, and just push it into place like that. So we've now not put any pressure on these two bits of green plastic, and that should all be held in place. And if we ever want to remove this part, we just have to get a pair of pliers and pull that little peg out. I just think that's going to hold it in just as well as the original, if not slightly better. So let's check that this door lock mechanism actually works. Right, so He-Man is in jail currently. If we try and get him out, we can't because it's locked here. If we push the lever at the top, it unlocks, and there we go. He-Man is now free. So that whole mechanism is working again. We've repaired the hinge. We've repaired this locking sort of mechanism axle on the back. That's that piece done. Let's move on to another part of the Fright Zone.
P-O-Y, P-O-L-L-O-I.
Now we're going to look at repairing the spring-loaded trap on the floor of the Fright Zone. This piece should be pivoted across the middle, but on this one both of the pivot points have snapped off, and then there's a piece of elastic that sort of wraps around this whole piece that should be held on by two posts either side. Both of those have snapped off, so what we need to do is replace the little pivot points. Again, we're going to use the same piece of Lego to fix this, so this is that Lego lance again. We just need to cut off a small amount and mount it on there. Because this is such a small area, what I'm going to do is drill a tiny hole into this piece and insert a small piece of paperclip. This is just the sort of end of a bit of paperclip. I'll insert that into there. I will then drill a small hole into a piece of this and we'll stick that on, because actually all you need is an incredibly small tab. If we look at the back of this, it's basically got to pop through that hole there. This bit of plastic does have a little bit of spring left in it, so we just need a piece of the Lego lance sticking out either side, maybe sort of 3mm at most, just enough to hold this in place. And then these posts I'm going to ignore. They did hold a bit of elastic band that used to wrap around this top section, so you can see there were these posts here, so the elastic band would wrap all the way around here and then back there, and that's how this thing is spring loaded. I don't think we need to replace these posts. If I cut two small little grooves at either end of this, the elastic band can hold into those, and I think that will be a bit stronger. I'm also not going to use an elastic band. I'm actually just going to use elastic. But the first thing we've got to do is replace these posts. So let's get some tiny holes drilled in this piece, and then we'll cut off some of the Lego lance and attach that and see if it works. So there you can see I've now got two tiny pieces of paperclip just stuck in where those little posts were snapped off. I need to glue those in place, so I'm just going to use a little bit of super glue here, put some onto a piece of paper so that I've got full control of where these are going. I'm going to then take these bits of paperclip out just using a pair of tweezers, if I can. Actually wedged in quite firmly, that one. So let's do it with a pair of pliers. So there's the piece of paperclip. I'll get a little bit of super glue on the end of that, and then I will push that back into the hole and let that glue in place. That should glue quite firmly. We'll do the same on the other side. So just a little bit of super glue onto that. We'll glue that in place. And while that's gluing, I can get the bits of Lego ready that we're going to stick on top. And again, those will just be super glued on. I think that should be strong enough to support this trap mechanism. Okay, so there they are glued in place, and you can see they look pretty reasonable. I have filed down the ends a bit just to round them off, so let's try this and see if they work as a good sort of hinge point for this piece. So let's drop that in, So I say there's a little bit of flex left in this plastic. Oh yeah, there we go. That seems to work quite well. Yeah, that's not bad. I'm very pleased with that. So a couple of bits of Lego to the rescue on that one. We now need to sort out the elastic so that this becomes spring loaded again. So as I said, originally there was 2 posts sticking out either side of this, and there was a elastic band that wrapped around the whole of the mechanism. Obviously these posts have snapped off much like these small ones have, and I think if I'm going to try and attach anything here, the force of whatever elastic we use will just snap those pieces off again, so I'm not going to bother. What I'm going to do is I've got a small needle file here. I'm just going to sort of file 2 notches, one on either side, which I think will be enough for the elastic to sort of fit into, and it shouldn't sort of ping out. And also obviously this bit is much stronger than those little posts were. So if I just file 2 little sort of notches either side, one that side, one that side, and then we'll get some elastic on it. We'll see if it works. I think probably something like that will be enough. It's just got to catch the elastic in it so it doesn't fall off the end. I think that should be fine. So I'll do the same on that side, and then we'll get some elastic cut to size. The original setup of this trap had an elastic band going around the back part here, so it hooks on here, goes round these little posts, and then hooks onto that part there, and that's the way the mechanism is sort of loaded. I'm not going to use an elastic band. What I've got here is some thin flat elastic, so this is 3mm flat elastic. I've got 30 centimeters of this, and I've basically just tied it into a loop, and this has got a nice spring to it, and I think it will last a bit longer than an elastic band would. So what we've got to do is stick this onto the mechanism. So we're going to hook that onto the little notch that I've made at the top there. We will wrap it round the posts. It has to go inside that post there, along and round, and then it hooks back onto the other notch on the other side, like so. And there we go, now the trap is loaded. So if we turn this over, this trap should now work. What happens is basically a figure, or a monster, will step on this bit and it flips shut because it is spring loaded. Yeah, and that is all working, and then once you sort of reset it, it's held in place. So I think that is fully fixed. A bit of Lego to replace the little pins that we're missing, and then a couple of notches sort of cut in the side of it, a piece of elastic, and we have the trap working again. So that's it for part 1 of this restoration. I feel we've got quite a lot done, although actually the set doesn't look that much different. We have fixed a lot of small issues. The jail cell works properly, and the trap that Evelyn is stuck in now works properly as well. So that's 2 key issues that have been fixed. Join me in part 2 when we will be restoring the rest of this Fright Zone. I do need to say a massive thank you to Peter, who very kindly sent me the broken set of the Fright Zone, and also to Bass, who very kindly sent me another version of the broken tree. So we'll be getting onto those bits in the next part of this project. If you like this video, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.